Lesson 8. This is the project, Make a Library, Part 1. We'll spend 2 days in class completing this project, and then the third part of the project, which is really just where you write your responses and you submit it, will be done on your own. Now, I'm going to split this into 2 different videos. Make a Library, Part 1. In this one, you'll need to select a theme for a library of functions. And a theme is something that you're going to do, a number of functions that help you accomplish a particular task. You're going to design the API for a library of functions, including the function names, purpose, and parameters, and types of values each function will return. You remember, a theme is just something that, a common thread that runs through all your functions. Now, think back over all of the different apps that you've built so far this year, or that you've used or modified. What blocks do you wish already came with App Lab to help you with those apps? Think about it. What things might have been useful? Well, today we're going to begin our final project before your Create performance task. You will be building a library of functions that you and others will be able to import and use. And you'll get to customize App Lab. Now, the activity. Project Make a Library. What you need to do is go to Unit 7, Lesson 8, and open up, and probably best to do a Google Doc, okay? Do a Google Doc. Save it so that you can share it with your classmate, because you're going to be working with another person, and get that activity guide, okay? If you haven't done that, pause the video now and go do that. Now, project description. Libraries let you build functions that you and others can use to help build more powerful apps in lots of situations. As the designer of a library, you not only need to know how to program, you also need to think about the many different kinds of programs other people might build. For this project, you will design and build a library of functions around any topic you want. You will have an opportunity to exchange feedback with another group, or at least one other person, about how you might use their library to design an app. Finally, you're going to answer a few questions about the library you designed. And these will be very similar to the ones that you will be answering for your Create task. So this is your opportunity to practice before you do the Create task. For this project, you will submit a link to your library of functions and this completed project guide. Library requirements. Your library must contain 2 or more functions. I would suggest at the beginning, just work on 2. If you have lots of time left over, great, go for 3, but 2 functions, okay? At least one function must include a loop, an if statement, 1 or more parameters, and a return. It's got to return something. So one of your 2 has to include these 4 things. The other one doesn't need all 4 of these, okay? Now, your library can be about any topic. If you need some ideas, try this list below. Strings, okay? You could have a library that works with strings. It could capitalize the first letter of each word in a sentence, make it a fairly long string. You could trim, remove spaces from the beginning and end of a string. You could remove a letter, removes a given letter from a string, so you pass it a letter and the string. Anything else you'd want to do with a string, okay? You could change the last letter, the first letter, whatever it is you want, okay? You can do that with strings. That would be a string library. Lists. Well, you could find the maximum value in a list. You could find the minimum value in a list. You could find the average. You could actually find out which average was greater between 2 lists. Okay? You could pass 2 lists to a function and find out the average for each and then determine the largest. That would actually give you several different functions. You could actually make each one of those things a function within your library. Count. You could count how many times a given value appears in a list. You could combine, you could filter on numbers, you could filter on letters. Numbered list, turn a list into a string with each item numbered and appearing on a different line. Top 3, you could do the biggest 3, or the in a list that's in sorted order, unique, return a list of each unique item in a list. So in other words, if I sent in a list of names, give me just the unique names. Sort, return the list in sorted order. That can be a little bit tricky. You do have your algorithms book that goes through the algorithm for sorting, a couple of different types of sorts. Anything else you might want to do with a list, and there's a lot of stuff to do with lists. A data set. You could choose a data set and build a function that will help a user access or summarize specific information within that data set. Okay? Something else, as long as your library does something interesting and valuable. Okay? So those are some ideas. Now brainstorm. This is you individually. Brainstorm a theme for your library. What looks good to you? What kind of blocks do you want to add to AppLab? What situations do you want to make easier for yourself later on? So take 5 minutes and brainstorm. Think about what it is you want to do. Okay, have you got some ideas? Great. Now, before you start writing code for your project, you should spend about 10 minutes defining the different functions in your library and how they should work. This means you will need to write out the comments that describe the function, the different parameters, and what will be returned. Okay, so choose 2 or more functions you'd like to build. At least one needs a parameter, a return, loop, and an if statement. Fill in the project guide. Okay, so here it's just the name of the function. Remember, you're not doing a whole lot. What are you going to name your function? And then describe it. Okay, notice maximum list. It takes a list and returns the largest value that appears in the list. The list is what's passed in. That's the argument. Return number, the largest number in the list. Okay. Now, loop, if statement, parameter. Yes, the function should include all of these features. When you think about how you're going to do a list, you're going to loop through it. You're going to have an if, and if it's the biggest, you're going to save that biggest one, and at the end, you're going to return it. So this would be an example of a function that contains all 4 items. All you have to do over here is say yes. You don't have to say which ones and how it's working. Okay, so this should take about 10 minutes. Again, please just start with 2. If you can do more, or you are more experienced and you feel comfortable writing more, that is great. But I would rather you do 2 fantastic functions in your library and be able to talk about them than to get yourself overwhelmed with doing too much. So pause the video, take 10 minutes, and fill this part of your activity guide in. Now you're back. Fantastic. Now we're ready to build. You're going to use the rest of your time. So you basically have taken 15 minutes out of a 70-minute class. So you have a good bit of time left to build out the functions you designed. You should start by working on one of your functions that includes all 4 features. Do that one first. Then you can always add in a smaller function later, something that doesn't do quite as much. Okay, you will need to develop a function like this as part of the Create Performance task. So you're going to need something like this in Create Performance. You'll also be answering questions about your function in the free response part of this project, as well as in the Create task. So start with the one that contains all 4 features first. Then go to the next one. When you have successfully completed step 2 of your project guide, then you should be able to write a lot of code very quickly to set up your functions and comments. Be sure you have comments in your code. Now, at this point, okay, oops, sorry, didn't mean to click forward. Go ahead, and this is going to be the end of this video. Take your time, build those functions. You should have about an hour, okay? In class, we would have a little bit less because you'd be able to leave, but realize you need about an hour to write 2 functions, okay? Please don't make these, remember these do one specific task. Don't make them too large. If they're a reasonable size, you should be able to build your 2 functions within 1 hour. So at this point, I'm going to end this video and go build.